Okay, today we are going to be focusing on sonnet poetry. Hopefully you already have your worksheet open in front of you, so you can follow along. First of all, what is a sonnet? The word sonnet comes from the Italian word sonetto, which means a little sound or song. So I actually have a video that's going to further explain what exactly a sonnet is.
The sonnet is one of the most famous forms in English poetry. A poetic form is a type of poem. Each form has its own rules and is associated with particular themes. Sonnets are associated with desire. For centuries, poets have used the frame of the sonnet to explore the complicated human experience of romantic love. English poets borrowed the sonnet form from the Italian poet Francesco Petrarch. Traditionally, the sonnet has 14 lines of iambic pentameter linked by an intricate rhyme scheme. Iambic pentameter refers to its rhythm. Basically, each line of the poem has 10 syllables and every other syllable is stressed. For example, shall I compare thee to a summer's day, which is the first line of a sonnet by William Shakespeare. Not all sonnets have the same rhyme scheme. To figure out a rhyme scheme, we look at the last word in each line. Each end sound is assigned a letter of the alphabet. So here, day is first, so we make it A. Temperate doesn't rhyme with day, so it's B. May does rhyme with day, so that's A again. The scheme is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. When you read a sonnet, it's important to think about what the poet is saying, but also how. Sonnets typically have a turn, a place where the argument and the rhyme scheme change. In this poem, line 9 introduces a complication signaled by the word but, and it also brings in a new rhyme with the word fade. It may not always be obvious that you're reading a sonnet. Especially if the poem has 14 lines, look a little closer, even if it isn't about love. Poets have continued to use this form to explore a range of subjects, including war, religion, and the value of poetry itself.
Okay, so as she mentioned, sonnets are a 14-line poem. They have a very distinct rhyme scheme, which we will see when we actually read a sonnet. And she mentioned that they're written in something called iambic pentameter. Okay, this is a very fancy way to say that each line has 10 syllables. Even though that's true and that's the case, it's a little bit more than that. So I actually have a video for us to watch that explains what iambic pentameter is. Even though this video is going to mention a lot of big words and a lot of things that we haven't talked about, I don't want you to panic, okay? I just want to have a better understanding of what iambic pentameter is, and don't worry about not knowing what those other things are.
Watch carefully. To someone first encountering the works of William Shakespeare, the language may seem strange. But there is a secret to appreciating it. Although he was famous for his plays, Shakespeare was first and foremost a poet. One of the most important things in Shakespeare's language is his use of stress. Not that kind of stress, but the way we emphasize certain syllables in words more than others. We're so used to doing this that we may not notice it at first. But if you say the words slowly, you can easily identify them. Playwright, computer, telephone. Poets are very aware of these stresses, having long experimented with the number and order of stressed and unstressed syllables and combined them in different ways to create rhythm in their poems. Like songwriters, poets often express their ideas through a recognizable repetition of these rhythms or poetic meter. And like music, poetry has its own set of terms for describing this. In a line of verse, a foot is a certain number of stressed and unstressed syllables forming a distinct unit, just as a musical measure consists of a certain number of beats. One line of verse is usually made up of several feet. For example, a dactyl is a metrical foot of 3 syllables, with the first stressed and the second and third unstressed. Dactyls can create lines that move swiftly and gather force, as in Robert Browning's poem The Lost Leader. Just for a handful of silver he left us, just for a riband to stick in his coat. Another kind of foot is the 2-syllable long trochee, a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed one. The trochees in these lines from Shakespeare's Macbeth lend an ominous and spooky tone to the witch's chant. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burn and cauldron bubble. But with Shakespeare, it's all about the I am. This 2-syllable foot is like a reverse trochee, so the first syllable is unstressed and the second is stressed, as in to be or not to be. Shakespeare's favourite metre in particular was iambic pentameter, where each line of verse is made up of 5 2-syllable iambs for a total of 10 syllables. And it's used for many of Shakespeare's most famous lines. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. Notice how the iambs cut across both punctuation and word separation. Metre is all about sound, not spelling. Iambic pentameter may sound technical, but there's an easy way to remember what it means. The word I am is pronounced just like the phrase I am. Now let's expand that to a sentence that just happens to be in iambic pentameter. I am a pirate with a wooden leg. The pirate can only walk in iambs, a living reminder of Shakespeare's favourite metre. Iambic pentameter is when he takes 10 steps. Our pirate friend can even help us remember how to properly mark it if we imagine the footprints he leaves walking along a deserted island beach. A curve for unstressed syllables, and a short line for stressed ones. If music be the food of love, play on. Of course, most lines of Shakespeare's plays are written in regular prose. But if you read carefully, you'll notice that Shakespeare's characters turn to poetry, and iambic pentameter in particular, for many of the same reasons that we look to poetry in our own lives. Feeling passionate, introspective, or momentous. Whether it's Hamlet pondering his existence, or Romeo professing his love, the characters switch to iambic pentameter when speaking about their emotions and their place in the world. Which leaves just one last question. Why did Shakespeare choose iambic pentameter for these moments rather than, say, trochaic hexameter or dactylic tetrameter? It's been said that iambic pentameter was easy for his actors to memorise and for the audience to understand, because it's naturally suited to the English language. But there might be another reason. The next time you're in a heightened emotional situation like the ones that make Shakespeare's characters burst into verse, put your hand over the left side of your chest. What do you feel? That's your heart, beating in iambs. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. Shakespeare's most poetic lines don't just talk about matters of the heart, they follow its rhythm.
Okay, so again, I know that probably seemed a little bit overwhelming, but I promise we're not delving into it very deeply. I just wanted to provide you with a better explanation as to what iambic pentameter really is. Okay? There are 2 different types of sonnets. One is called the Petrarchan sonnet, which is Italian, and the other is the Shakespearean sonnet, which is the kind that we are going to be focusing on. So a Shakespearean sonnet is composed of 3 quatrains. A quatrain is a group of 4 lines that follow a rhyme scheme. A good way to remember this is that the prefix qua, right, Q-U-A, that always means 4. Think about a quarter, think about the Spanish word for 4, cuatro, okay? Qua means 4. A Shakespearean sonnet ends with a couplet, which is just as cute as it sounds. A couplet is 2 lines that rhyme with each other. Get it? A couple of lines. So we are going to practice this by reading Sonnet 18. Hopefully you already have your worksheet open in front of you. So what we're going to do is just like we always do. We're going to read Sonnet 18 one time through, Don't feel like you need to annotate anything. We're just going to kind of take it for what it is, and then we'll break it down. So here we go. Sonnet 18 by Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. And every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growst. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Okay, so I'm sure you're thinking, Shakespeare, what is going on? Okay, but before we actually delve into the meaning of the poem, let's do some basic things first. Let's identify the rhyme scheme, okay? This is something that we've been practicing a lot, so hopefully this won't be too tough, okay? But we look at the last word in a line and we see what it rhymes with. So our first line ends with the word day, so we give it a letter A. Our next word is temperate. Temperate and day do not rhyme, so temperate gets a new letter. Okay, but then we have May. Because May and day rhyme, okay, gets a letter A. And then we have date. Temperate, date, it rhymes, so it gets a B. Okay. Then we move on to the word shines. Shines doesn't rhyme with anything before it, so it gets a letter C. Dimmed also doesn't rhyme with anything before it, so it gets a new letter, D. Declines and shines rhyme, so we give that one a letter C as well. Untrimmed and dimmed rhyme, so it gets a letter D. Okay, then we move on and we have fade. Fade doesn't really rhyme with any of the words before it, so it gets a letter E. Oest also doesn't really rhyme with anything before it, so it gets a letter F. Shade and fade rhyme, so they both get a letter E. Growest and oest rhyme, so it gets a letter F. And then we have our last two lines with C and D. Okay, so they both get a letter G. All of Shakespeare's sonnets are going to have the exact same rhyme scheme. A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. Okay, if you remember, we talked about quatrains maybe 5 seconds ago. Okay, quatrains are a group of 4 lines that share the same rhyme scheme. So because we've labeled our rhyme scheme already, we can really clearly see those chunks of 4, right? Our first quatrain is A, B, A, B. Our next quatrain is C, D, C, D. Our third quatrain is E, F, E, F. And then we end with our couplet, right? G, G. Just like that, we've labeled the quatrains and the couplet. So now we can see the poem kind of broken down into chunks of 4, right? We have 3 chunks of 4 and then 1 chunk of 2. Perfect. Now let's figure out what the heck is going on. So our poet, Shakespeare, begins by saying, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" Well, that's lovely, right? Think about summer. The weather has been quite nice lately. Summer is beautiful, right? It's hot. In the next line, he goes on and he says, "You are more lovely and more temperate than a summer's day," right? So in this case, better than summer. That's a great compliment. Okay. He then goes on and he says, "Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date." Okay, so why is this person more lovely and more temperate than the summer? Because sometimes in the summer there's wind and the summertime ends, right? However, this person is not rough, right? And their sunshine doesn't end, right? Person as unreliable as summer. Okay? And our next quatrain It also talks about, it says, sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. Okay, not sure what that means, but we have the word heaven in here, and that's probably a clue. His gold complexion, right? So like the warmth in your face has dimmed. And then it goes on and it says, and every fair from fair sometime declines. So let's think about that for a minute. If any of you have ever seen the Disney movie Snow White, okay, the evil queen always asks her mirror, who is the fairest of them all? So in this instance, the word fair means beauty. So we have two lines about a gold complexion dimming and beauty declining. And why is that beauty declining? By chance or nature's changing course. Okay, right? Your beauty fades as you get older. And that's what it's saying, right? As nature continues to change, right? Those seasons pass, beauty will fade. But there's a plot twist. But thy eternal, okay, eternal means forever, eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair, right, of that beauty, thou owest. So this person's like light will not fade, their beauty will not fade, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade. Okay, so death, if this is a person, oh wow, what is it called when you have an inanimate object but you give it human characteristics? Personification. Wow. Anyway, okay, death won't be able to brag that he has you when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So something, we don't know what yet, right? Something is keeping this person alive. Okay? But what could it be? So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So those last two lines, they rhyme with each other. And it says, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. What is this? Think about it. What did we just read? This poem, right? So because of this poem, it's lived on for forever, right? The memory won't fade. So essentially, what this poem is doing is it's comparing the memory of someone, right, to a summer day, and it's saying that their memory and their beauty will never fade, because as long as people, like men, can breathe or have eyes, right, they will be able to remember this person through this poem. This poem gives life to thee. Fun fact, you may have noticed that in this poem, Shakespeare uses the word his. Okay, so this is not a love poem to a woman. Okay, instead, it's a love poem to one of Shakespeare's sons who died, I think from tuberculosis. So this is kind of a way to honor his son's memory, right? And often his gold complexion dimmed, nothing will result in his son's memory fading. I mean, think about it. It's been however many years and we're still reading this poem. That's pretty impressive. So now that we've done that, it's your turn. Okay? You are going to read, I'm actually going to read Sonnet 130 out loud to you to define a couple of words, but you will then break this poem down just like we did before. Okay, so Sonnet 130 by Shakespeare. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Okay, so you are going to break this poem down just like we did before. Okay, identify the quatrains, identify the rhyme scheme, identify the couplet, and then just like we annotated at the top, go ahead and write what you think is going on in this poem, right? Summarize the different pieces, what is happening, and then most importantly, identify 3 different comparisons Shakespeare is making in this poem. What does Sonnet 130 how does it compare to Sonnet 18? How are they similar? How are they different? Be specific. You can write your answers directly on here. That's totally fine. And that's it. You've got it.